So we got a new segment. This is it's basically it's like to just to let the people out there know. It's like one of those videos that's like 14 things you never knew about whatever, but it's also it incorporates the podcast trope of two old friends broadcasting their bromance because that's what a podcast is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Uh, anyway, so here's a surprise for you, sir. There is also a hidden game show element.
We like
So,
this.
every time we do a topic, I'm going to do like a different, seemingly random topic each time, and all of them have something secret in common.
Like
And it is your
topic
task. Each topic
connected.
has something in common with the last one,
All right.
and so on and so forth.
Woo.
And the first thing has something in common with the last thing. They all have the same thing in common, and it is your task, Mr. Johnson, to determine what that is.
All right. Hell yeah.
Yes, sir. So you're probably not going to get it on week one, and I figure we could I'll stay on this particular secret commonality until you guess it, or we could finish it out. Once you figure it out, you'll probably find it really fun.
Okay. Hell yeah. I am so down.
Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit today about the 33rd president of the United States, Harry Truman.
All right.
All right, Truman.
Truman.
So let me ask you before we get going. What do you know about Harry Truman?
That he was president.
He was president.
Now I know he was the 33rd.
Yes,
That's all that's coming up now.
That's about it. Okay, well then you're going to learn practically everything there is to know about Harry Truman right
Fuck
now.
yeah.
All right?
All right.
Feel free to make jokes. That's why you're here. So Harry Truman was born in 1882 in Missouri in a really, really small town. And he didn't go to school until he was 8 years old. And even then, when he went to school, he went to rural Missouri 1890 school.
Yeah. Basically
So
not school.
Not school. Basically, yeah, like a daycare where they hit your kids. So, verily, Harry Truman was kind of a dumbass. He was a lifelong kind of an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, specifically, he could not read or write well at all.
He's modern presidential material.
Right. Well, actually, in reading about him, I have found a lot of kind of odd parallels between Truman and Trump, and not just the first four letters of their last name. But no, it wasn't intentional at all. I wasn't trying to do that, but you'll notice as we talk about the life of 33rd President of the United States, Harry Truman.
All right.
Did you know he was a vice president?
I probably knew that at some point. Yeah.
Oh, baby.
I didn't know that off the top of my head.
You're going to learn so much. Here we go. So, yeah, Harry Truman is what you'd probably call today an emerging reader. If you can get a video, and I think we can, I found one, of him reading a speech while president, most of them are pretty painful.
Ooh.
Like
the way they're written?
The way it's written, the way he reads it, he puts the wrong inflection on words because he clearly doesn't know what they mean.
Oh God. Awesome.
Yeah. So do find one of those, put it in there. Okay, so his name is Harry S. Truman. You know what Harry is short for?
Harold?
No, nothing. His name is actually fucking Harry.
It's just Harry.
His name is Harry. All right? There's your fact. Put a little number up there in the corner. Bing. His name is just Harry. He was named after, I want to say, his uncle, whose name was either like Harold or Harrison. But they just named him Harry. They didn't finish the name. Maybe they didn't know how to spell it. Okay, and then the S. What do you think the S stands for?
Steven.
It stands for nothing.
S? It's just
S. It's just S. So he had 2 paternal grandfathers. One of them had a middle name that started with S. Ship, I think, was his middle name. And the other one was, his first name was Solomon. So they just gave him an S. Just S.
Just S. All right.
Just S. So when Harry Truman was very young, one of his very first jobs was as something called a Shabbos Goy. You ever heard of a Shabbos Goy?
No. What the hell
So
is
it's
that?
basically he's a little Jewish go-to guy. Like he wasn't Jewish, but Jews who lived near him, they couldn't do errands on their day of rest or Shabbat.
So he would just do that stuff for them?
Yeah, so they would like pay him to run errands on Shabbat.
All right.
Yeah, I don't have a joke about that. I thought it was pretty cool though.
That's interesting. I wonder if that's still a thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never heard of a Shabbos Goy. Was he the only one ever? Did he did he make that up?
He was a pioneer.
Yeah. So Harry Truman is the only U.S. president since William McKinley who did not have a college degree.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Didn't have a college degree, and he was president. You might argue that Harry Truman was the most powerful man in the history of time.
He made shit happen.
Well, he dropped a couple of bombs, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this might tie back into our Watchmen discussion.
Oh.
You know?
That'd be kind of sweet.
This guy's the reason for a doomsday clock.
Yo, fuck this guy.
Hey, you know, that's the thing is, right? Like, fuck Harry Truman for dropping the bombs. But, you know, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so no college degree. He actually went to college 2 times, but dropped out 2 times. After dropping out of college for his second time, Truman went and proposed to the wife who would eventually become, or to the woman, I should say, who would eventually become his wife. Her name is Bess, but she said, no, basically, you are a broke-ass scrub. So he decided to get his act together. In like the 19-teens, he started a couple businesses, but those failed. He made a little bit of money sometimes, but it didn't really go anywhere. Ended up closing shop. So Harry Truman, you know, a rural dumbass who dropped out of college twice, and he asked his wife to marry him, but she didn't want to marry him then. So what's he do? He tries to join the army.
As you do.
And it was World War I. So around that time, joining the army was kind of seen as like an adventure. Like really, because you'd go and you'd see the world, and you'd go and meet interesting people with bullets. And I think that around that time, people weren't really aware of the advancement in military hardware. Because, like, prior to World War I, if you got shot, you probably weren't going to die. And if you got shot at, you probably weren't going to get hit.
Mm.
But then comes World War I, and suddenly you've got automatic fire, and you've got rifling, which makes bullets more accurate. And, you know, suddenly millions of people can die in a single day. So,
yeah.
But anyway, so Truman, well, he tried to join the army, but it turns out he was legally blind. Which
I didn't know that either.
Right? So that may have had something to do with, you know, why he couldn't read that well. But so in one of his eyes, he had 20/50 vision, and which I think is like legally blind. And then in his other eye, he had 2400 vision.
What?
So like yeah, I didn't know there was a thing, and so he basically didn't have use of that eye. Like it didn't do anything. But Truman, in a master stroke, secretly memorized the eye chart and went back and passed the exam on his second try.
Damn, dude. He's determined.
Yeah, dude. And right, like
slick shit.
That's like some Steve Rogers shit.
Yeah.
He like tries to join the army and they're like, nah, sorry. And he's like, I'm gonna do it again. So he did, and eventually he got into the army. I don't know how they overlooked that. Like, boy, this guy's eyesight has really improved. Good for him.
Damn. Damn, it's perfect.
So Harry Truman, who has been an idiot his entire life, and he couldn't get paid, he couldn't read, he couldn't get laid, couldn't get a lady, maybe because he was blind. So he joins the army, and you know what? He excels at it.
Really?
Yeah.
What did he do in the army? He was like a soldier?
An idiot in his entire life, gets in the army, and is excellent. Just pointing that out. So
that's bizarre.
Yeah, Truman gets into the army and is like promoted twice within a couple of months. He's a real standout guy. And that's something that will become a recurring theme in Truman's life. You'll find out later. So he is like put in charge of his own group of guys. He eventually made the rank of captain. And he was like the captain of a battery D, I think it was called. I don't even know. Like it's a platoon or a squadron or so. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah.
So he gets sent to northeastern France in World War I, along with a bunch of other guys who all trained at the same place. They all get shipped to northeastern France in 1918. So now remember Truman's awful eyesight as I tell you this story. So on September 27th of 1918, Truman spies through his binoculars. So this is something probably like 30 feet away. A bunch of Germans, like a battery or battalion or a squadron or whatever. It's a bunch of guys with some weapons and World War I style tanks and horses, and they're setting up shop for an ambush on the nearby 28th Division. This is not Truman's division. And so his orders were to watch out for anyone who might be firing on the 35th Division, which is basically facing the other way. So he grabs his walkie-talkie, phones it in, and they were like, oh, shoot, thanks. Nice looking out, Truman. We'll get someone on it. You just keep doing your thing. So his orders were to only fire on enemies who are basically facing a certain group of soldier boys, not this group of soldier boys. They told him not to fire on them. They're going to get someone on it. And so Truman, he kept an eye on both situations, as best as he could.
Yeah.
And he saw that things were not improving. Whatever gray blobs were standing 10 meters away, he knew that there were more of them and they were bigger. So, what choice did Harry S. Truman, rural dumbass who couldn't read or see or get paid or laid, make in this situation? He ignored the shit out of those orders, waited for the right moment, and opened fire on the Germans, utterly defeating and overpowering them.
What?
Killed a bunch of them. Took them captive. Not just him, but it was also like the people in his command.
Yeah.
And in the view of war historians, literally saved the lives of all the men of the 28th Division.
That's insane.
So somebody's great grandpa, dude.
Yeah.
Got saved by Harry Truman for his vigilance. What's that?
Blind old Harry Truman.
Blind old, can't read, failed business, 2-time college dropout, Harry Truman.
That's awesome.
Saved some serious lives. Yeah, dude. For his vigilance and foresight, Truman was awarded by his commanding officer with the threat of being court-martialed for insubordination.
For doing it in the first place?
Yeah.
Jesus
Because
Christ.
he ignored his orders, right? But that guy's boss saw the event for what it was and refused to pursue the matter. Truman did end up winning 2 medals for his service in World War I. I don't think either of them were related to this. He got basically like the World War I equivalent of a participation award.
All right.
Like, really, I think it's called like an Allied Victories Medal. So, like,
Allied
you were on the winning team. Congrats. Give him a little trophy. So,
a little soldier.
It's got it's a baseball trophy, like a little league baseball trophy. You got to pin it to your jacket still.
And go fight another war.
Yeah. So after this, Truman and his trophy come home. You see a little reference right there?
Yeah.
Come home, he stays in the Army, moves into the reserves. He gets promoted a couple more times. He really genuinely did like a bang-up job. Like at one point, he was in charge of the store. Like they have a store on base. And most of them don't make money. But his did. Like, I guess he took a little $2 investment from everyone on the base. And then in a few months, he gave everybody $1,000 back. Yeah.
Damn, dude.
Dude, he turned it out, man. And that's like a lot of money then. A lot of money. So then, and he finds himself in the U.S. Senate after coming home. He's kind of a war hero, and his dad, growing up, was always involved in the Missouri Democratic Party, so he's able to use those connections and gets himself a United States Senate seat.
Damn.
And now, so, Truman's on a roll. Here. So then when Red Hot Calvin Coolidge got elected in 1924, the so-called Republican wave, and Truman lost his re-election bid for the Senate. At least that's what his biography blames it on.
Yeah.
He might have done a bad job. It's certainly within possibility. But
yeah.
So, but to be fair, at that time, 1924, the presidency, the House, and the Senate all go Republican. And
all at the same time.
All at the same time. And the last time, the next time that happens?
Probably recently.
Right now. Yep.
Yeah.
So 1924, they all go Republican. You know what happened in 1929?
What? The Depression?
Yeah. So basically, they get control of the economy and ram it straight into the fucking ground.
Yeah, as they do.
as you do. So then after that, he ran to be a judge in Missouri, and he actually won. He had tried a couple times before and didn't win, but this time he won, and he won re-election. So eventually, he decides he wants to run for the U.S. Senate again. And he talks to the people who are in the Missouri Democratic Party, and they're like, no, we got someone who can definitely win. No thanks, Truman. So they go and they ask that guy, and he says no. They ask the next guy. He says no. Eventually, they come to literally their fifth choice, and that's Harry Truman, and he runs. And he won. So as you can see, Truman's life is kind of like a series of people absolutely not believing in him because they probably shouldn't, because he can't read or write, and he can't see, and he's pudgy and round and weird. And so now Truman is elected to the Senate in 1934, and there's actually what you call a Democratic wave at this time. I think all at once, the House, the Senate, and the presidency all flip again and go Democratic. And this is when FDR is elected president. That was in 1932. He was elected president. And Truman was vocally in support of FDR's New Deal legislation, which maybe you're a little familiar with.
Yeah.
So Truman is elected in an absolute landslide. So now Truman eventually becomes FDR's vice president. So that's how he ascends to the presidency.
Okay.
Is he was FDR's vice president and FDR died. You know, FDR served like 3 terms and was elected to a 4th. He ended up serving a bit of it, but we're going to get to that. So while in the Senate under FDR, Truman is made head of the Committee of Military Affairs. And this seems like a really small, unimportant detail, but the thing is, Truman ends up, again, doing an absolutely amazing job, despite everyone in the world doubting him and thinking he's about as smart as a fucking potato. So he saved like something like $250 billion in today's money on the military budget.
Holy shit.
Huge, yeah. And so he gets the cover of Time magazine for this. So this is probably what brought him to the attention of the National Democratic Party. So FDR had 3 vice presidents in his 4 terms. He had a guy named John Garner, his first 2 terms, then a guy named Henry Wallace, and then in his last term, Harry Truman. Basically, FDR made enemies of his first 2 vice presidents. They left office because they hated each other. And actually, you know what's funny is he was not FDR's first choice to be his running mate for his 4th term.
Really?
Yeah. So he wasn't his first choice. He wasn't his second choice. And then he wasn't even his 3rd or fucking 4th choice. Again.
So funny.
Right. So Harry Truman, here's the thing. So Harry Truman is sworn in as vice president in late January 1945. FDR passes away April 12th, 1945.
Ooh, okay.
So, yeah, Harry Truman again got promoted a couple times in just a couple months.
Yeah. What fucking luck, dude.
Dude, oh my gosh. So yeah, he heard the news, goes immediately to the White House and briefly meets with Eleanor Roosevelt, and he's like, "I'm so sorry, is there anything I can do?" And she's like, "Anything you can do? Dude, is there anything that we can do for you?"
Yeah.
Like, shoot, bro. You got a tough job now. So yeah, Truman ascends to the presidency. He was affectionately known by the public as the president that nobody wanted.
Such a nice term of endearment.
Yeah. So he was not his wife's first choice. He was not the military's first choice. He was not the Missouri Democratic Party's first choice. He was not FDR's first or second or third or fourth choice. And Truman is now the most powerful man in the history of the world because U.S. scientists have, unbeknownst to Truman, but ironically known by Joseph Stalin, developed a weapon of incomparable destructive magnitude.
Oh, God.
Yes, indeed. Yes, if you did the math, Truman was vice president for 3 months before inheriting the big round office.
Jesus.
He had met with Franklin Delano Roosevelt 8 times before his death.
8 times? That was it?
That's it.
Holy shit. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, dude. No, it's really it's a surprising little tale.
Yeah. Holy fuck.
Yeah, dude. 3 months. And they're like, by the way, you've got an atomic bomb that you could use, Mr. Commander of the Armed Forces. Any old time you'd like. Nudge, nudge.
Oh my god.
Before we get to the bombs, and I'm not even going to go too deep into that because if you want to find out more about the history of the atomic bomb, you don't need me. You know,
Yeah.
plenty of stuff out there for that, but not a lot of stuff out there for the life of Harry Truman. Anyway, random tidbit. You know who Truman's vice president was in his first term?
Who?
Nobody.
You didn't have one?
Didn't have one. I have no idea why.
All right.
Yeah.
You'd think he would want one, considering how fucking in over his head he was.
Yeah, maybe somebody with like a lot of experience. Yeah.
I'd be
So,
begging for it, help.
right. Maybe somebody that he could resign and give the presidency to.
Yeah.
But that ain't like Truman. It isn't. He's a fighter. And, when he's got something he wants in his sights, he fights for it. Like his wife and like his position in the army, man.
Yeah. That much
So-
is evident so far that he
Oh, it's evident so far that what?
that he doesn't give up. Like he just keeps going for it.
Right. That's true. And it's whatever you want to say about what's about to happen in Truman's life, he was tenacious. And it seems like he always did the best with what he had. I'm not like a big Harry Truman fan or anything. I did a lot of research on this, specifically for this. So this is all stuff I learned too, and that's why it's made it through the filter. It's because I found all this stuff interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, coming away from all this research on Harry Truman, I find I kind of admire him for his tenacity and for his resourcefulness. He always, like he memorized the eye chart.
Yeah. Like when something got in his way, he
did his best. He did his best despite being a potato. He's like literally a potato man with glasses. Big glasses.
That's what he'll be known for me on. Potato man.
I even in my notes it says like don't talk about the bomb too much. But like how can you not?
Yeah, it's like that's where the story concerned.
So
not ends, but that's yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's the dawn of modern society, genuinely.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
what's
horrifying.
Yeah.
So I'm supposed to figure out how
yeah. Oh, I got lots more on Truman, but hey.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh, yeah, no, that ain't the end of his life, man. And that ain't the end of random interesting tidbits on Harry Truman. But yes, that will be your task. Whatever we cover next time is related somehow to this topic.
All right.
It's going to be your job to figure.
I mean, we still got a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
If you want to drop a Harry S.
Yeah. That's what I'm going to call it, poop. From now on.
Just poop.
So, not only is the dropping of the atomic bomb the dawn of modern society, a lot of UFO conspiracy theorists claim that it's this event that drew aliens to investigate us.
The bombs?
Yeah, that's what they say.
I can see that.
And I'm using that as a clever segue to my next thing. So have you ever heard of the Majestic 12?
Maybe. Sounds somewhat familiar.
Good, because now I can tell you what it is like you're a member of the audience. So, allegedly, it's a document written by Truman to Secretary of Defense James Forrestal, who was, by the way, the first Secretary of Defense.
The very first one?
Yeah, we didn't have a Secretary of Defense before that. Before that, we had a Secretary of War. His name was Henry Stinson. But anyway, so Truman was definitely reaching out for some help in his presidency. His For example, he created the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
Anyway, so allegedly, a document written by Truman to Secretary of Defense James Forrestal documenting the creation of a high security level UFO research group.
That's random. Is there any? Oh, I guess we don't have a ton of time. Is there any particular reason why he decided to do this?
It was like the Roswell incident
Okay.
was during Truman's first term. It was in
Gotcha.
1947. So that's like the theory. And the document has been largely debunked. For example, Truman's signature on it has been like almost definitely copied and pasted.
Okay, so this wasn't a real document.
Probably not.
Okay.
But some people in UFO circles think very highly of it. And just a couple points to its credence. Presidential historians and writing experts, while maintaining that it is a hoax, add that if it's a hoax, it's a very well done hoax because the writing in it definitely matches Truman's own writing style from around the time, and the people named in the document are known to have met on the date listed in the document, but they're not said to have met for the reason that the document suggests.
Okay.
But one funny thing is people point out, as a means of debunking it, that a whole lot of things in it are misspelled and there's a lot of grammatical errors. But from what we know about Truman...
Oh, right.
Yeah.
He's a dumb shit.
He's right.
Stupid ass.
So the last thing I want to talk about is Truman's re-election campaign. So have you seen that picture of Harry Truman holding up the newspaper that says Dewey defeats Truman? And well, that didn't happen. There's no President Thomas Dewey.
Yeah.
You know what paper that was?
What?
Chicago Tribune.
Was it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I could never forget that picture because I remember seeing it. He's so dirty. It's just an awful amount. Like him, like Truman in the picture.
Yeah.
I'm not true. Oh yeah. Like in that picture, I remember I was thinking like those people have baths. Like when were baths? I don't know if you remember that. But, I just remember thinking he's filthy.
I can tell you from what I've learned, he didn't shower that day. I can tell you that. Yeah, Truman.
I didn't think that would even be info.
He went to bed on election night, and because he was just really tired, he like went to bed before the results came in.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's basically so. Like, and then he found out the results at like 3 a.m. and just got up and got dressed. So there's no mention of him showering, although it is well recorded what he did.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So that election kind of played out like this. Everybody in the country thought Thomas Dewey was going to win. Like journalists and experts and pollsters, everybody thought that Thomas Dewey was a shoo-in because Thomas Dewey was not an idiot, whereas Truman definitely was.
He was definitely an idiot.
But then Truman goes to the Democratic National Convention, and they were not too excited about him. There are even people, you can find pictures of people who they're holding up signs that say, "We're mild about Harry."
Burns.
Right. So they weren't even very excited about him.
Yeah.
And then he goes and he gives a speech, and he coins the term "Do Nothing Congress." You ever heard this?
Yes.
That was Harry Truman in his re-election.
I had no idea.
Yeah, convention speech. And so, but what that is the Republicans in Congress, they shot down legislation that Truman introduced that was meant to like stimulate the post-war economy. And
Uh,
then when it was time for them to reveal their platform for the election, it had like a lot of the exact same stuff in it. So
so they're just caught stealing his idea.
yeah, and like, but not. They were like, stopping him from passing it just so that he didn't look good.
Yeah.
So Truman goes and he calls him out on this, and he says like, "Hey, if we want the same things, why wait? Let's pass this stuff right now." And he called a special session of Congress and got it done. So he like shoved it right back in their face and like,
Yeah. Made them do it.
yeah, he kind of like hijacked their platform. Yeah. So and then he went campaigning like mad. Thomas Dewey was like the tortoise. Truman was the hare. Dewey thought like I got this in the bag, so he went to like 20 cities and gave really boring speeches. I got a couple quotes from Thomas Dewey's campaign. Here's some things Thomas Dewey had to say. Agriculture is important. Our rivers are full of fish. You can't have freedom without liberty. And finally, most on the nose. Our future lies ahead.
What a great campaign.
Oh, he was good. Meanwhile, Truman went to, remember how many cities I said Thomas Dewey went to? Like 20?
Yeah.
Truman went to literally over 250 cities.
Oh, shit.
And all on
Put in the
train.
work.
Yeah. And he knew everything about everyone present. He had people like on the ground finding stuff out, find how the football team did, what Democrats were running for what in town. He's like showing off his family. He genuinely did a great job.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So when people did like pre-election polling, it looked like Dewey was totally going to win. But then it turns out Truman had like just a mass of people who weren't polled who go to vote on voting day, and he won in a landslide.
Shit.
It like wasn't even close. And
That's fucking nuts.
this is also kind of a parallel with Trump.
Yeah,
remember?
for sure.
Yeah, Hillary was like projected to win.
Yeah, like we didn't even really think it was like Donald Trump was like a threat. Like it was just almost like a joke, like having to run up.
Right. Yeah. And I remember like state after state turning red. Like,
Yeah.
what the hell is going on?
It's horrifying.
It was weird, man. But anyway, so the Chicago Tribune went to print way too early, famously issuing papers with the headline "Dewey defeats Truman."
Jeez, that's so fuck.
And yeah, and then after that, actually, Truman ended up leaving office pretty unpopular. There were like massive strikes during his presidency, like railway workers and steel workers and coal workers all went on strike because things that were put in place by FDR to get us out of the Depression, they like expired then, and Truman didn't renew them. So a lot of these industries got affected, and he ended up being like deeply unpopular. He had like a 22% approval rating at some point,
Rough.
which is actually the lowest for any sitting president ever, up until Richard Nixon.
Damn.
Yeah.
That says something.
Yeah, he even at one point he suggested, like, he was going to put in a speech. He was trying to get people to like round up and hang union leaders.
Hang
Literally.
them, like from
hang them.
That's
and
evil.
But it's deeply evil, yes, indeed. But fortunately, his aides managed to convince him to not put that in the speech. Instead, he just suggested a law saying that anyone who's a railway worker on strike should be immediately drafted into the army. And that law passed the House of Representatives. So there's that.
All right.
Thankfully, it failed in the Senate.
All right. Yeah, I feel
Yeah,
like I would have heard about that if it didn't fail.
yeah. Um, and then I know you got to get going pretty soon, so I'll just wrap it up. He got
Gotcha.
us into the Korean War without seeking congressional approval. There's that. Uh, Ended up
Good
being a
job, buddy.
stalemate. Yeah. um, and then Joe McCarthy accused his State Department of harboring communists, and it led to the whole Red Scare thing. But again, that's a story for another day. He established NATO and put Dwight Eisenhower as the commanding officer of NATO. Dwight Eisenhower would obviously later become president of the United States just a few years
Yeah.
later. Um, a couple guys tried to kill Truman. A couple Puerto Rican nationalists
Really?
tried to shoot him. Yeah, he
Fuck.
ordered an addition onto the White House. Mind you, like the economy is not doing great. He's not
Mhm.
popular, and he's like, put a new balcony on the White House. So, so he's staying in another nearby house at this time, and a couple people tried to make a run for him and kill him. They failed. One of the guys was sentenced to death, but Truman commuted his sentence to life in prison.
That's surprisingly noble.
Yeah. Or is it? I don't know. Death might be
Yeah,
better than
actually,
life in prison.
uh,
So Truman he served most of FDR's term, and then he got elected, served his own term. So that's like 2 terms, right?
hmm.
So Truman was going to run again. But then Congress conveniently decides to pass the 22nd Amendment. And it says that a president can only serve 2 terms, and if you served more than 2 years of another president's term, that counts as a term. So fuck you, Truman.
So they're dropping hints.
Yeah, they're dropping hints.
The party's over,
And
man.
yeah, and then so Truman's presidency is coming to an end, and both parties actually approached Dwight Eisenhower to run for them. All Eisenhower knew about politics, because he didn't pay attention or care, was that people were mad at Democrats, so he ran as a Republican. And then he proceeded to be like more socialist and democratic than Truman ever was. He had like a 95% tax on wealth past a certain amount.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then Truman died poor. He didn't have any money after being president. The only
Really?
money he had was, yeah, he had a pension that he got from being in the army.
So that's what he was living off?
That's it. It's like
Wow.
$1,000 a month in today's money.
Wow. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had no idea.
Yeah.
That's
He
crazy.
sold whatever property he could. He sold his memoirs. And then
Hmm.
eventually in 1957, Congress passed a law saying ex-presidents get a $25,000 a year pension, probably to throw him a bone. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And Herbert Hoover, who was the only other living ex-president at the time, definitely did not need the money, but he took it, and a lot of people think it's to save Truman some embarrassment.
Yeah.
And then,
Wow.
yeah. Truman was a lifetime advocate for government-sponsored health care for the elderly. So when Lyndon Johnson signed the Medicare Act, he issued the first 2 Medicare cards to Truman and his wife Bess.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
damn.
yeah. And then, 1972, Truman died and was buried at his presidential library in Independence, Missouri.
He's buried there?
And yeah,
Oh.
and given his history with reading, he probably does not haunt it.
He's like, why the fuck did you leave me here?
This sucks.
It
No,
sucks, dude.
yeah, it's his decision though. It is a pretty modest ceremony.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So Harry Truman, complicated fella.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
Learned a lot about Harry Truman today. Goddamn.
There you go,
Shit.
man.
Didn't know he was a dumbass.
He was a dumbass. He was, but he was a determined and tough dumbass. And when push came to shove, he wasn't really a dumbass. He was like he
He's
could put his
kind of
brain to
calculated.
work when he needed to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird how that kind of works with him. Like, for a guy who just through all that, and then he's actually kind of clever, but just dumb. He's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Maybe not the middle. That's not as
Maybe.
generous as you should be.
Yeah, maybe a little generous. Maybe not in the middle.